Have you ever stopped yourself from continuing a learning experience or even doing something because you didn't understand it fully yet? This episode is for you. Hello, my beautiful, gorgeous dance baby, and welcome to another episode of More Than Dance. Today, we are talking about going through the motions, getting it a little done, messy action, and you don't have to get it yet. So, the reason why I'm talking about this today is one, I was recently talking about messy action in our 1 year episode. And I was thinking, I just want to expand on that a little bit more. And then also, some of you know that I've been taking sewing lessons for the past 6 months. And one of my goals this year is to make our costumes for performance team. Actually, I wonder by the time you're listening to this episode if I'll have made them, because we're like 2 months ahead. So it's now practically May. So May to June. Yeah, they'll probably be done by the time you're listening to this. That's one of my goals. And today I was sitting down with my sewing instructor and she was like, you can do this and this and this and this. And I was like, okay. And I was nodding my head and I was like, okay. And I told her, I was like, I don't get it 100%, but I trust that you do. And I know myself really well because I went to school for elementary special ed and I can understand how my brain personally works for learning things. And I know that there's certain things spatially that just don't make sense to me and that they eventually will once I see them. I'm very visual. So if I can visual it all out, then I'm like, okay, I get it. And then if I'm not able to do that and I have to do the conceptualizing in my head, I don't understand it. So I make a lot of effort to make sure that I can see things. And when there's not an opportunity to, I trust that I'll eventually understand it. So here we are, we're tracing another costume onto tracing paper and using this really cool pizza roller thing. I'm like, okay. And she's like, okay. And then this part is this part and this part is this part. And then you're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And I was like, okay. And part of me wanted to understand it entirely so that I could know it. And the other part of me was like, you know what, just do the steps and it will make sense later. So I'm at the part now where it makes sense a little bit and it doesn't make sense a little bit. And they both exist at the same time. And that's one of the biggest things when you're learning how to dance is two things can exist at the very same time. And it's messy and it doesn't always feel good when it's messy, which is so funny because getting more done, even if it's messy, is actually way better. It's kind of like the concept of when you're cleaning your house, would you rather have one beautifully cleaned room or would you rather have all of your house cleaned 85%? I'm sure all of us would want it cleaned 100%, but 80% of all the rooms to me personally is better than 100% of one room only. And the same is true for dance and the same is true for when I'm learning how to sew. So it can feel like you're going through the motions. And I want to rework those two things with you and myself as well, because I get to remind myself of this every time that I'm confronted with it. So messy action, one of those ideas, it's ooh, yucky. And then another idea of going through the motions. We were never told that going through the motions is a great thing. And so it's oh, they're just going through the motions. They're going through the motions and they're just doing those things that they got to do. It's not an exciting thing. It doesn't feel like it's the right thing to do. And I'm here to tell you that going through the motions can be what saves your progress and saves your interest and saves your curiosity, because you're not doing it to the extreme of it being so full out that it actually discourages you because it feels like it's unattainable. So a great place to talk about this is when you go into dieting or the gym and you go all out for 2 weeks and you cut back on all of your sugar and you go to the gym every day. Well, you burn yourself out and you kind of ruin it for yourself, because then the next week you go so far in the opposite direction that you kill your progress. Now, in dance, progress is not linear. In a lot of things, progress is not linear. And it's actually really quite nice to know that and trust that, because you know that you're in there for the long game, the long haul. And that's what we want to lean into a lot of times, because learning might feel like it's not an exact science because it's different all the time, and the way that you are that day showing up is different. And it also can be pretty exact. And it can be pretty exact in the way that you are showing up no matter what. It can be really exact in the way that you're understanding some of it and not all of it. It can be really exact in the way that you're pretty much going to forget a lot of the information. I mean, raise your hand if you've ever learned something and like I forget so much. And then in little blips, it'll come back to me throughout different lessons. Like I'll be like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember that. Oh yeah. I remember that. That's like really exciting to me sometimes too, because I'm like, oh yeah, I did learn this. It's like, it's faded out a little bit, but it's in there somewhere. Something that someone once told me once is that whatever you are meant to remember in the moment is what you're meant to remember. And anything else that you forget, let yourself like forget it, because it'll come back to you and you'll remember it when you need to remember it. So I made this example about sewing a couple months ago. It was learning about notches. And I remember doing some research on it when I first learned about sewing and just understanding what the heck it was, what it was defined as a term. And then I watched a YouTube video on how to transfer your notches onto a pattern to fabric. And then I remember my exact experience with it where I didn't transfer my notches. And my teacher was like, oh, where are your notches? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I didn't transfer them. And it was that moment that it stuck for me. So yeah, I was kind of going through the motions. Maybe I was like allowing myself to forget because I didn't need that information at that time. And when I did have the information, like, oh, you didn't bring your notches, there's usually a solvable fix that is very easy to do. So I didn't have the notches. Well, okay. So guess what we did? We brought out the paper and we brought out the fabric and we matched them up and we then put the notches on. So yeah, it was like an extra step, but it still got done and it still made the garment that I was making. So for you, you might forget like one of the techniques for one of the turns, and your turn might be kind of like messy and sloppy, but it might not matter because what you're really focused on that day could be memory. And then by the time you finish the routine, you might be like, okay, well, I kind of get the memory now. I'm not really forgetting things. Let me kind of go back and spruce up some of the technique. And then you get to the turn part and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. I've got to pull up. I've got to spot. And then once you do that, whoop, there's your turn. Your turn is clean. It's no longer messy. The way that you went about it was messy because you're like, oh, I don't care about that. I'm going to move on. I'm going to keep going with this other stuff. Memory. And then you get to go back. And if not in that class, it could be a different class that you get to go in on other parts of technique. Because as we know, not every class is going to be the same. One of my favorite examples to share about messy action is actually the way that I like to learn dance. So when I'm learning choreography personally, I like to strip down all of the styling and the technique. And I like to get the movement in my body in a marking it way. And so it's very gentle. It's like kind of not there. It's halfy. It's justy. It's just like arms, a little bit of legs, a little bit of body. And then I can expand upon that. So if you're watching it, you're like, whoa, like that's sloppy. That's messy. Yeah, it is. And I actually remember being in a class and being called out on this, like, oh, the arms are this and da. And the teacher was like, and make sure that you're doing it full out as you're learning it. I completely disagree with that. I think learn in whatever capacity that you want to learn in that best suits you. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that because I know myself. So I remember being like, in the movement, and there was like this movement, and see, because I did it my way, I remember it. I can remember this was years ago. And I remember you go up and then you come in. And when I was doing it less than full out, I was like kind of just like putting like I usually like kind of close my eyes and I let the movement happen lightly so that I can feel what it feels like versus looking at what it looks like to then feel it. So it's about getting the movement to be in your body here versus through our eyes. And a mirror can be, it's a deceptive tool, isn't it? Because it kind of insinuates, look at the mirror and use that as your best, biggest tool. Very true. Like I would not love to learn how to dance without a mirror. Fun fact. When I first opened the studio, I was like, okay, I got to get amazing mirrors. Like I have a pet peeve with mirrors, okay? And I don't like when I go to a dance studio and the mirrors don't reach the floor. And like glass and mirror people, like they don't know like what dance is. So like, you don't really need like all the stuff to the floor. And I'm like, yeah, you do. And I want like the mirrors to be high. So anyway, they're expensive mirrors. And I remember someone very close to me at the time was like, you can start dance and you don't need mirrors. And I was like, I just laughed. I was like, okay, like false. You absolutely need mirrors. Like a dance studio is not complete without mirrors, in my opinion. And I mean, I've been teaching dance for 20 years, so I think my opinion matters. But the idea is, one note about mirrors to the floor is if you do have moldings, then like you can't go all the way to the floor because then you have to take the moldings off. And then like also the floor is like, so you can't sometimes go all the way to the floor. So I did learn that, but you can get pretty close to it. So there's that. So when you're using the mirrors, yes, it's a great tool, the biggest, baddest tool that we have other than the teacher. And another big bad tool is taking yourself away from the mirror and feeling. And that's exactly what you do when you get a chance to be not full out. And that's exactly what I was doing. So again, messy action, paving the way for success. When I think about performance team and like when we're getting ready for our performances, we are 100% all in. It is ready to go, clean. We are like endurance trained at that time that our performance is ready to go. And it's a very polar opposite experience to when we're in the learning phase. In the learning phase, it could feel a little done. So you learn a routine and you kind of have it in your head and you're like, well, it's kind of in there. It's a little done. Comparing that to the product of a performance team performance, it's going to be drastically different. And what gets us to the performance team product is it being a little done and a little more done and a little bit more done. Because it doesn't just boom one day, I just teach the whole performance team combination and then we know it. No, it's like working around formations and taking time with changing up the songs and maybe reorchestrating the mix, or we did this combo here, but let's actually see if we can put it somewhere else. It's a kind of done process. And obviously, I trust that process because it's the process that gets me to all of these amazing numbers. And at the same time, when you're first beginning dance, you might not know that that process even exists unless you really relate it to something else. So you could relate it to surgery and just the idea of like opening up a body part and like going in there and doing stuff. It's messy while it's happening. Like do you watch Grey's Anatomy? It's so messy. And then it gets cleaned up and then it heals. Messy action. And then of course there's house renovations. Things get like demoed and it's like really messy and like all that dust that it makes. And you're living out of like your garage kitchen and like you got a microwave in there and it's messy. And then it's clean. So we can come to this conclusion from pulling from other areas of our life where it makes sense. But for whatever reason, when it gets to our experience in the learning process, we think as soon as we learn, it must be perfect. So that means that there's no chance for it to be messy or sloppy or in that like rough phase. Well, that's not true. We need it to be messy. We need it to be not done yet. We need it to be not a finished, perfect product. And you'll find that if you're able to do that, you're going to have a lot more fun in the learning experience. So as you're on your unique learning journey, I want you to remember that you don't have to get it 100%. You don't have to even get it 10%. You can get it even less than that and still be making progress. A little done is better than none done. None done. And going through the motions, despite what it sounds like, can actually be what helps you in your learning phase because it might be the missing key to take off all the pressure that you're putting on yourself. And as you know, it's so much more than dance. So using these ideas can help with other life connections. So when you're thinking about starting something new, building new habits, getting into a relationship, building your confidence, you don't have to have all the steps or all the next steps in order to do the first step. And I hope that you take this with you and that you too adopt this idea of messy action because it really does alleviate a lot of stress. And it does take some talking to. Like when I'm doing something, I'll tell myself messy action and I'll still be like, ooh, no, no, I don't want it to be messy. And it also gets the job done. So I hope that whatever you're working on, you get it done this week or this month in an appropriate timeline without overthinking your perfection. And if you're beginning your dance journey or if you're in the midst of your dance journey, I want you to know, let yourself mess up. Let it be messy and know that it doesn't all have to make sense right now. And if this was helpful for you at all, it would mean the world to me if you shared this on your Instagram, as sharing this podcast can help someone else just like you on their dance journey. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the dance floor.